All right, well, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Kyle Empringham. I'm the co-founder of the Starfish Canada. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, also known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. And this event is going from coast to coast. I'm in Victoria, British Columbia, and I know there are folks in Newfoundland on the call as well. So genuinely a national endeavor. And so no matter where you are, I think it's really important to acknowledge the territory on and get a deeper understanding of the people that were here first. And so I always recommend that if you don't know whose territory you're on, that there are many great programs online that can help you learn just a little bit about that. And I think if we do bit by bit, and if we make sure that we are intentional about that learning, that we can learn a lot more about how to care for our environment and make sure that we're doing the best things that we possibly can. That's about all you're going to hear from me. The only thing I'll say here is that this is being recorded, and so if you're a guest, feel free, just know that that's there. And if you have any issues with that, please feel free to use the private messaging function in Zoom, and you can connect with me and we can make any accommodations. But for now, I'm going to pass you to the host of today's event, Manisha Narula from the League of Innovators, and over to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Kyle. Hey, everyone. Manisha here. I am so excited to be here. There's going to be so many stories that will come out of today. The format of the event is really straightforward. There are no slides, no gimmicks used, and these stories are meant to be just shared as pure as they are. So we have 4 speakers today that have 5 minutes each to share their story. And really, your role is to really trust that these are all true, pure, and raw stories that are all about leading and inspiring change. And of course, our theme for today, which is empowering your community. Before I go into what the stories will be about, and of course pass it over to the speakers, I'd like to invite Tessica Trong to virtually high five and congratulate the speakers. And of course, Tessica is no stranger to the Starfish community as a past winner and judge and board member as well. So welcome, Tessica.
Thanks so much, Manisha, and thanks so much, Kyle. And hi, it's so good to see all of you. I just want to start by also saying that I'm on the unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. I'm based in Ottawa, but originally from Vancouver, from the West Coast. And I just wanted to say a big congratulations to each and every one of you that have been nominated and named on this year's Top 25 list. It's a huge honor, and I know that beyond this, like the work that you do is so incredible and so important to your communities, to Canada, but also to the world as well. And especially in this time of COVID, I hope that you have some time to sit back and to reflect and to really celebrate how big of an accomplishment this is for you, but also for your community, and to really reach out and to thank the folks in your lives that have supported you and mentored you and really helped to make that possible. I think behind every amazing leader is an incredible community that has been in support and really been part of inspiring and empowering you to do your very important work. So I just wanted to say a big congratulations. I know that being named on the Canada's Top 25 Environmentalist has had a huge impact on my life and has opened so many doors and opportunities and enabled me to support other young leaders. And I hope that you'll all, and I know that you will all pay it forward and continue to be role models and inspirations for others in your community as well. So congratulations, take it all in. And I can't wait to hear all of your stories today. Thanks so much, everyone.
Amazing. Thanks, Tessica. That's so true. This is such a good time to just take a step back and really acknowledge yourself for what you've been able to accomplish so far as well. So today we'll be using Zoom, of course. I'm sure everyone, if you weren't already, you have been familiar with this platform over the last month. But just a couple of tips on how you can make the most of today's session. So we are using the chat function to submit any questions. We will be addressing all the questions after all the stories are shared, but as the speakers are sharing their stories, take the time to start posting any questions on the chat function. And also, of course, post any comments or thoughts as they're sharing their stories, and give them a thumbs up, which you can also do in the form of a reaction on Zoom. So if you can see, Kyle has a thumbs up and I have a thumbs up as well. So you're welcome to do that during and after the stories as well. And then we recommend using speaker view. So if you want to see the person that's speaking, you can just go to the top right corner and change it to speaker view as well. But overall, a pretty straightforward platform to use. And our goal is to be wrapped up in 45 minutes, so we'll see how we do. So as mentioned, today's theme is all about empowering your community, given that people are really at the heart of environmental change making and the work that these speakers are doing, and I'm sure everyone's doing that's currently dialed in. So it's really no surprise that it takes a village to build a community, and my own work is all about community building, so that's what I'm constantly thinking about every single day as well. So these leaders will really be sharing their trials, tribulations, lessons learned about what it means to really create a people-powered approach to positive change. So all these change makers have done incredible things, but keep in mind that today is really about a moment in time that really meant a lot to them, and hopefully inspire you along the way as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Abnash Bassi, who will be talking about the cycle of advocacy and empowerment.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Abnash. I recently completed my first year of engineering studies. If at any point you can't hear me clearly, just let me know. But I'm going to be talking today about my experience being empowered to tackle environmental issues as a glimpse into some of the types of opportunities and actions that can be used to empower others in our communities. And the experience that I'm going to be talking about today is one of the experiences that really brought me into environmental work and kind of empowered me to continue encouraging others as well. So in 9th grade, I found out about the Young Reporters for the Environment competition. And this is an eco-journalism contest. It involves students from around the world being able to submit videos, photos, and write articles about various environmental issues. So that year, the theme was plastic pollution. And I was in 9th grade, and my social studies teacher at the time was encouraging our class to try and participate. I'd never heard about this before, but my friends and I were excited to try and do something a little bit different. We'd gotten kind of bored of some of the homework that we'd been getting, so being able to make a video for fun sounded pretty cool. So we decided to kind of delve into the project, and being in 9th grade, when most assignments and things that you receive are fairly rigid in their requirements, being able to have the creative freedom to create a video was simultaneously really exciting. At the start, it was also very challenging. So we sat down as a team and tried to collaborate, come up with different ideas for how we would visually present and spread awareness about plastic pollution. And we settled upon creating a documentary style video. We were quite an inquisitive group. We really liked asking questions, and we wanted to have some meaningful conversations as a part of our video. So we sat down and did some research in terms of who we wanted to interview. And then came time to actually try and contact these people. Now, sending emails to people that you don't know is scary. Many years after having done this, it's still something that can be kind of terrifying. You don't really know how your request is going to be received. So we decided to email the mayor of our city, some local individuals who are working in conservation work, and a number of other local organizations. And we weren't really expecting very many responses, but we ended up having a lot of support from these individuals. We were able to actually interview the mayor of our city at the time, which was really exciting. And just knowing that these individuals were willing to support us, especially when this was our first kind of attempt at any type of an initiative, was really, really meaningful and kind of sparked that initial moment of feeling empowered. And what was essentially 15 minutes of their day of us interviewing them was really significant for us for life in terms of the context of this project. So that kind of got me thinking about the idea of taking risk and the idea of reaching out, just because at the start of this project, we hadn't really expected any of that type of support. But by these individuals who were in positions of more influence than us, they were really able to have a significant impact in terms of empowerment. The impact of the project itself was something that really stuck with me. Our entry managed to win at the national level, which was an honor and really exciting. But the most impactful part of the project itself was just the empowerment that it provided. Our team was able to present at a number of local school board meetings and generally able to share the work that we had done with others. And this was the first time where I was able to take something, beyond the context of school and actually focus on something that was important to me. And knowing that other people cared about it, even though that was in the context of a contest, was really empowering. And it just sparked the importance for me of building up the confidence to ask questions of people. So interviewing the mayor while in 9th grade, it was challenging to sometimes ask tougher questions about, looking fairly critically at what was being done. But by taking that step fairly early on, it really instilled in me the importance of taking those risks to do what was important. And above all, just realizing the empowerment that I personally felt from something like this really encouraged me to take on some of the initiatives that I worked on later. So different presentations and other work that I did, this really reminded me the importance of trying to instill that sense of encouragement. And above all, just the idea of ownership in terms of the work that you're doing. A lot of the times when students want to become involved in some of these issues, just because they're so large and because it's hard to find a spot to get started, being able to start with something small and give that sense of ownership is really important. And above all, just the idea of, I've tackled this, I can tackle the next thing, that really stuck with me from this project. So this really empowered me to get started in that cycle of empowering others. And it was a really meaningful experience for me.
Amazing. Thanks, Abnash. I feel like so many lessons came out of this experience, which is really awesome to see. And it's incredible how far a school project that you're so passionate about can really take you, and for you to really take a risk in terms of cold contacting people, which I know is really scary. So again, if you have any questions, we will be addressing them after all the speakers have gone, but feel free to start adding them on Zoom. And if you're comfortable, if you feel you want to send it to us privately as well, you're welcome to send any questions to Kyle and myself privately as well. So we'll go to our next speaker, Milton, who will be speaking about how he built chapters of community through his nonprofit MealCare.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. There was a little funny thing show up. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks. It's actually, such an honor to be named in this amazing list, and even just to be here and share, some of my stories and my experiences with everyone. It's really great that everyone's interested. So, yes, since high school, I was in more.
Milton, your voice is cutting off a little bit. It might be
Okay.
your mic, or if you want to try using headphones.
Yeah, you know what? Let me try these.
Sorry to
Oh, no worries, no worries. There's a little sign that's was saying that there might be trouble, so let me check. How's this work?
Yeah, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so since high school, I was getting more and more passionate and interested about being able to have an impact in environment and climate change, and being a student and how to empower space. So at university, I co-founded an organization called MealCare. But early on, I was just trying to. Oh, am I still having issues?
We're having the same
Okay.
issue. I feel like
come back
everyone
to
is experiencing the same thing. Yeah, if you don't mind, do you want to check if there's another alternative or if there are any issues, and we can come back to you if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, sorry, Milton. I'm sure we'll figure
No worries.
this out. Okay, so sorry to put the third speaker on the spot, but we're going to move on to you. So we have Kehkashan, who will be speaking about her personal journey as an environmental crusader.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really excited and happy to be here today. Like Manisha said, my name is Kehkashan. I am a United Nations human rights champion. I am also the winner of the 2016 International Children's Peace Prize, the youngest recipient of Canada's Top 25 Women of Influence and L'Oreal Paris's Women of Worth, I'm a National Geographic explorer, and most importantly, I'm the founder and president of Green Hope Foundation. I have also just been elected as youth lead of Toronto St. Paul's Constituency Youth Council, and I'm a climate reality leader and a TEDx speaker. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, so when I was 7 years old, actually, I was 7 years old and I saw this image of a dead bird with its belly full of plastic. And my 7-year-old brain could not stop thinking about the agony the bird must have gone through before it died. And it was also around that time that I attended a lecture by environmentalist Robert Swan, who was the first person to walk to both the North and South Pole. And his words, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it, really resonated with me. And I decided that I would start my green journey right then and there. So I decided that on my 8th birthday, I would plant my first tree. And my birthday is also coincidentally World Environment Day, which is 5th June. So I always thought that I was preordained to become an eco-warrior and save the world. I began working on the ground. That dead bird really prompted me to continue to work on the ground. And I did that for about 3 years. And then the UN somehow caught hold of what I was doing. And I was invited to my first UN conference in Indonesia, the Children and Youth Conference, where I spoke to the children about how they could make a difference. And the following year, I was at the United Nations Earth Summit in Brazil. And there I had another life-changing moment because I realized that there was a severe lack of inclusivity of children in the sustainable development process. And to rectify this issue, on my return, I founded Green Hope Foundation so that I could provide children and youth with a platform to learn about sustainability challenges and then how to take actions to mitigate these problems. And it was also a few months after that that I was elected as global coordinator for children and youth at the United Nations Environment Program. So that made me the youngest person and the only minor to ever hold this position. And that was another life-changing moment for me as well, because I was able to bring the voices of children and youth to at the level of policy making and work on the ground at the same time. So Green Hope then went on to use education for sustainable development as a transformative tool. So we currently have 2,038 members in 15 countries, and we've been able to reach out to over 57,000 young people in 25 countries. And we have this very special tool called Environment Academies, which are essentially workshops conducted by children for children. And that was it was based on my experiences as a child and understanding that peer-to-peer communication really was the way forward, especially in the sustainable development process. And since most of the children whom we work with don't go to school or don't know English, we use creative ways of communication like music, art, dance, drama, sport, fashion, and writing to spread awareness. When I was 11, I wrote my first book called The Tree of Hope, which follows the story of a young girl who turns her village into a green oasis. And I wrote that book so that other children could have a role model to look up to when they wanted to take actions to save the environment. And this was officially published by the UN, so it was able to get a greater reach and to more young people across the world. And armed with the knowledge that our members gain at our academies, they venture out into their local communities to bring about positive changes. So we planted over 58,000 trees all across the world, recycled over 200 tons of waste, planted more than 5,000 mangroves, cleaned up over 150 beaches and communities, and we've worked on sea and river turtle conservation worldwide. And now with Green Hope Foundation, we work on intergenerational solidarity, and we create partnerships with people, organizations, governments from all across the world, because we can't achieve a sustainable future on our own. So my journey began with that one dead bird and experiencing sleepless nights after that. But I was able to turn that into a journey of change, growing a multinational organization and being able to reach out to children, young people, and all members of society all across the world. So that is my story. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. That was really great. It's awesome to see how you can look back and connect the dots, and there's so many things that led to your journey and where you are really now. So thanks for sharing that. Let's see if Milton is back on. I see that you're on your phone, which might be a bit better. All right, so you want to give it a shot, Milton?
I'll give it a go, but you have to let me know if it's not working again.
Okay, perfect, we will.
Yeah, so where was I? I think, yeah, so I was interested in environmental causes in high school, but then going into university, I saw that there was a lot of surplus food at cafeterias, and it's not something very hard to notice. I think most people notice that we throw out a lot of food, and then there's also food insecurity that's very noticeable in our cities and across Canada. But the difference was that me and my co-founder Sanchit, we wanted to make an organization that could create change that is sustainable, that is actually at the root of the problem, and that would be scalable. So that means a lot of things, but in terms of what we're talking about today, one of the biggest things that it meant for us was actually about empowerment. And we would only really, I would really learn about what that required from me maybe 2 years after we started the organization. So the first couple of years, we got it going at McGill. We were diverting surplus food from the main cafeterias, going to homeless shelters. And that'd be thousands of meals a month, for example, that would go to people who need it the most in their community. But then we launched in Ottawa. We launched a new chapter in Ottawa. It was very different from the one in Montreal, but we were also experimenting with different models. But then we were saying, okay, I think it's time for us to try and launch 2 more chapters across the country, because this is something that we can definitely see
Oh, did we just lose Milton? Today is not his tech day. Okay, we'll wait a couple of seconds, and if not, we will move over to our next speaker.
Oh, no.
Oh, Milton, you're back. You froze a little for the last few seconds.
Okay, can you hear me now, though?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Oh, gosh. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I'll have to check my internet. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. So we put out this call for applications. We were trying to get a bunch of new chapters started at once, and it didn't work. It was kind of growing too fast. We didn't really have a system approach to how to start these new chapters, and anyways, it didn't really work. But then about 1.5 years ago, we were ready to start again, and someone from Guelph, Kiana, reached out, and Kiana and David would start being the co-founders of the Guelph University chapter. And I took a different approach. It was a very much of, very hands-on, a lot of coaching, a lot of saying, okay, how can I empower these 2 great leaders to take what we've learned from our experience over the past couple of years at McGill and Ottawa, for example, and go and execute it in their own community, in their own context. And so there's a few things that I learned. Well, one, just to get to whatever happened at the end of the story, they, in a couple months, there was a lot of, oh, I'm not sure if this is going to work. There was a lot of roadblocks that kept coming up. But one thing about being a good leader that I believe in is that a lot of what you do is about inspiring confidence, passion, and drive to move forward in people, especially if those people aren't being paid. And that's one of the great things about leadership in nonprofits and having that experience. So I think it was in a matter of a week, we had the lowest low that we had a no from one of the top people we were speaking to get this program going in Guelph. And then a couple days later, and right away we got a yes, and we started diverting surplus food in like 2 days after that from Guelph, and now Guelph has been pretty much our most successful chapter. They have a great leadership team. They've diverted over 10,000 pounds of food just at their chapter alone, and we have in MealCare overall, we have now 4 chapters, 3 of them operational, diverting over 28,000 meals. So I think my biggest thing is that there's a few like key lessons that I think are very important for people to understand about what good leadership is, as opposed to leadership that works. Because you can be a leader in, let's say, a micro scale, let's say a group project or an organization that's only at one university or whatever in your family, for example. But you can make things work, like you can micromanage or try to have control over everything, and it can work. But being a good leader, I think, is all about empowerment and thinking about how does your leadership scale. And that's what the biggest question for me was look, I can't be in Guelph, I can't be in London, Ontario, I can't be in Ottawa. So how can I empower properly so that they can absolutely carry this forward in their own community? So there's a few things. One is you have to trust. Trust is like at the topmost of what it means to be a leader, because you can't have control over everything. All you can do is try and steer in the right direction towards success. But you have to trust in the ability for others to lead. You have to check your ego, because you're not, others can also be really great. And just because you've done it doesn't mean you're the only one that's done it. The only difference often is that you might have taken the first initiative, but now it's your turn to carry that forward to others. And yeah, again, you have to come to peace with things not being perfectly executed, especially while others are learning. So yeah, that's kind of my story of at least through MealCare and spreading chapters.
Amazing. Thanks, Milton. This is such a good example of, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together, and the power of actually building this like national community that you're really focused on. So I'm excited to ask some questions and dig deeper into it after as well. Okay, so we have our last speaker, Rebecca Hamilton, who will be speaking about community in climate justice organizing.
Hi, so I'm Rebecca. I'm 17 and a high school student in Vancouver, on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. So I, as a young person growing up in the 21st century, feel like I've always known about climate change. It's always been this big haze of doom that obscures the horizon of my life. And I can't really remember a time where I didn't feel this way or think about this. And I think when I was younger, I also just generally had a sense that there's a lot wrong with the world, but I wasn't really sure what to do about it or like where to begin. And I remember the moment that like taking environmental action really came into focus for me, was when I realized that nothing else mattered if our planet can't support life. And I felt in this moment that like this was the most important thing I could be doing, but I didn't know where to go from there. I spent a really long time trying to figure out how to get involved, because I felt that very few groups were approaching this all with the urgency that I seem to feel like so viscerally. I think that a common experience among youth is this intense cognitive dissonance, in that we're being taught in school and by the scientists that we're in an emergency, but nobody is acting like it. And I think that it can as a result, when people try and take action, it can often like not match up with that intense urgency. And the more I learned about the climate crisis, the more I felt like I just needed to run into the streets and scream. But most youth groups I could find were focused on like improving recycling in school, which was important, but I felt like was representative of that we're not given agency as high school students. I was really shy for most of high school, and so I really didn't feel comfortable like making plans during my weekend, let alone bringing people together to organize anything. But I slowly started to get involved in some adult organizations, and it was there that I really learned that the focus of change making has to be building community, because that is the only way to keep doing this, and also that's the world that we're trying to create, is one with strong community. But building community in an adult organization and being a part of that felt uncomfortable for me. So when I heard that the climate strike movement was starting to arise, the action really resonated with me, because youth were putting their normal lives on hold to prioritize climate action, which was what I felt needed to happen in the world in general. This was the sense of urgency that I felt. I'm literally not going to go to school until you take action. That was the action that really resonated with me. So I heard that some other places in Canada were thinking of doing a strike on December 7th, and I felt like this was my chance. This was finally a time for me to do something with youth that was urgent. And so I'd been involved in a couple of projects before then, but I had never done anything like this. So I really wasn't sure what I was doing, but I decided that first I needed to reach out to some other teens. So I reached out to other passionate teens I'd met through various events. And then I started facilitating meetings, and we tried to figure out logistics. When would we do this? What would it look like? How would we get the art there? What would the messaging be? How do you contact media? So I Googled, how do you write a press release? And tried to figure out how to engage with media. So after 3 weeks of really frantic organizing, and lots of video calls, and lots of like writing, the day came. And so I woke up and I got on the bus and headed to City Hall, and I was really nervous. I remember like listening to music to try and calm myself down. And so finally we were standing in the park, and we started the agenda and we started talking. A bunch of teenagers were just standing in the circle, and we had like some signs, and it was really, really cold. I remember that I felt like I couldn't walk. It was really cold for Vancouver. And so we were kind of unsure what was going on. And then the mayor came out and talked to us. We were at City Hall. We weren't really planning on targeting City Hall. It was just where we were. And we heard that the mayor wanted to talk to us. So we stumbled out some questions and had a conversation. And we felt like, wow, okay, maybe we've done something. And then we moved to the office of the environmental minister, and we were going to stage an occupation to make him talk to us. But we went in and asked the attendant, and he came in and talked to us. And so we felt like, okay, well, we've done something else. And then we spent the rest of the day sitting on, so that felt very successful. But I think that the most like nourishing part of the day was that we spent the rest of the afternoon sitting outside on the pavement in front of the office. We had this big piece of like this big fabric art that we put on the ground and sat on top of, and we played music. And we heard the cars coming by, and we like held signs and went and waved them at cars. And this was such an incredible feeling to me, because before I'd been trying to navigate like this huge fear of approaching catastrophe, and trying to create change by myself. And I felt like I wasn't really supported by a community, and I I didn't really know what to do. It was just me afraid in my room. But now I realized that I wasn't alone, and that there's other people that felt this way too. There's other people that felt like we were in this massive urgency catastrophe, and we were coming together in community. And also, it was really joyful. We were taking action, but we weren't just sitting on the pavement and like crying. We were listening to music, and it felt like a feeling of a world we wanted to move towards. So I think that feeling of connection and community really fueled me going forward, and showed me what this could be. And so we continued to organize, and as we continued to organize, we always held that value of like community at the center of everything that we do. And so I think some things that I learned from this was that I think that often when I was younger, I was mostly exposed to a narrative of like singular people that make a big change by themselves, and especially like super youth that sort of create massive change individually. But I learned that that's not really possible, and that like as I was organizing, I got lots of support from older people because I couldn't just like produce this knowledge by myself. And I worked with like a team of other youth. And so I learned that like nothing happens individually. And I also learned how important it is to try and keep things fun. Like on calls, if we had just been scared the whole time and angry, it wouldn't have been effective. And if at the event we had been really confrontational, it also wouldn't have been as effective. And then as we went forward, it didn't all just happen, and not everything fell into place. And I think one of the biggest things I learned is that after that big exciting event, I didn't really think in depth about like how to structure how we organize going forward. And I learned that the two hardest parts of creating change, in my opinion, are working together with other people in a way that like unleashes your shared brilliance. And that like thinking through how to work together with other people is really difficult, and also navigating the emotions involved. Like those 3 weeks of planning that strike were massive crisis mode for me, but I learned that that's not sustainable, and that everything feels so urgent and terrifying. But we can't create change if we're just in a mode of we need to constantly be in crisis mode. And so I think I've learned that it's important to balance the urgency and the peace of like trusting in the moment, and that the biggest way to do that is by staying in community.
Amazing. That was so great, Rebecca. Thank you for sharing. I feel like I got so many lessons out of it, but my top one is change making is fun. It doesn't have to be lonely or something that drives anxiety, but it's so fun when you're doing it with friends and a community of people. So we are going to move on with some questions for the 4 speakers. There's so much that came out of today around how everyone has really been supported by their community, and you don't have to do this work alone. It's all about the people that are supporting you and how you work with them and how you're empowering yourself, but each other as well. So I do have some questions that have come to me privately, but again, you're welcome to post any other questions on Zoom as well, either to everyone or send it to myself or Kyle. But one question that came up was really around this common theme and thread of how there's a lot of challenge and adversity when you're actually trying to lead change and change making in general in the environmental and climate space. So the question is whether you've had any aha moments or ways that you've pivoted your strategy that really helped you navigate any opposition that you were facing as well. So this question is for everyone here. So anyone is welcome to get started, or I'm happy to take on one of the speakers. Abnash, do you want to try taking this one?
Yeah, sure. So for me, in terms of maybe not so much direct opposition, but I think for me, oftentimes it's your own kind of mental hurdles in terms of kind of self-doubt, just because I think oftentimes as change makers, we are pretty critical of our own message. Like personally, I try and make sure that, you know, I'm having a strong evaluation of what I'm doing, looking at, you know, multiple sides of the issue. So I in my own experience, it often comes down to dealing with your own self-doubts in terms of, am I actually having an impact? What does that impact look like? And I think for me, probably the biggest thing that makes that shift is, number one, acknowledging your own intentions. So although the initiatives are whatever it is that you're trying to lead, it may not always feel as though you're having the most impact possible ever. But I think so long as you understand what your intentions are, in that, you know, you have good intentions to try and make some kind of impact, and that impact is likely going to be positive, and it's honestly better than doing nothing. I think reminding myself of that really helps with that self-opposition. And even when talking to others, it's really easy to have this idea of, you know, whatever you do needs to be absolutely perfect. And having that mindset can make it really easy to be critical of yourself, but also critical of the work that others are doing, because it's easy to notice those flaws. But I think reminding yourself of your intentions, that they're good and that you are doing something that's better than the status quo, I think that really helps. And as well, having just some strong research for what you're doing. I know in cases when you're dealing with climate change related issues, when you deal with that type of confrontation, having a really good foundation of why it is that you're doing what you're doing really helps in terms of dealing with people that might be more confrontational and potentially questioning, you know, the validity of what you're doing. So pretty much sums down to those two things: just the idea of intentions, what you're doing is likely better than the status quo, and having some good research to have a good foundation.
Mm-hmm. That was summed up so well, and I'm sure that so many of us can resonate with that as well. Milton, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, so I think, Abnash, yeah, you had some really good points. I think for me, somewhat related is, I think in leadership and almost anything I do, whether it's like a nonprofit, for-profit, whatever, it's empathy is like super important. So understanding the perspective of different people who you're talking to and different people that you're trying to get buy-in from. So let's say for MealCare, there's a huge hesitation for chefs to get involved at the beginning, and it's something super predictable because it's a very sensitive topic. It's, you know, we're talking about this issue that they know that exists in their kitchen, but they feel that might speak negatively about their performance, for example. And you know, one big thing is okay, how can you approach this conversation previously having thought of how they feel about it, and having an understanding of, look, this is what they care about, this is what they fear, or this is, you know, how I can get them to tap into getting into this initiative. So let's say for the anything to do with, you know, environmental issues, I think there's, you know, everybody, I think most people have a good heart that at some point you can get to how, like, the angle that they'll care about this certain topic. And it's just about understanding what that angle is, and trying to do your due diligence even just beforehand, and empathetically thinking about that perspective, and not, you know, judging them beforehand for having a different view. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, empathy, change making, community building, all go hand in hand. Rebecca.
Yeah, I really also like connect with what Abnash was saying about how like often the biggest barrier can be self-doubt. And I think that some things I've learned is that I think that I often have a feeling that like there is a correct answer and people know what to do, and that like it's just a question of stumbling upon what we should be doing to solve all of these massive crises. And something I've learned is that nobody really knows what they're doing. People in like environmental organizations don't know, like nobody knows what they're doing. And everyone's just trying to figure out some sort of path forward. Like there's no like guidebook that teaches you exactly like what to do in this moment in the face of global climate crisis. which is, I think, overwhelming, but also in some ways liberating. And I think one part that's really overwhelming is that everything feels so huge. And I know something that like I struggle with a lot is trying to figure out what is the most effective way I can take action in the face of such massive crises. And I think the best advice I've gotten is that like there's no most effective thing. But there's so many people in the world who are doing so many different things, and it's important to trust in like the ecosystem of change, that no person has to be doing everything, and everybody can fill their own niche, and the way to figure out what niche you go in is whatever gets you most excited. And the most important thing is that like you're really excited about the work that you're doing, because then it will be more sustainable, and then you'll be able to keep working. And I'm definitely like working on actually implementing this, but I think that really changed how I saw trying to figure out what to do next.
Amazing, Rebecca. Small, consistent actions can lead to bigger change at the end, as you're getting support from people along the way as well. Kehkashan, any thoughts from your end too?
Sure. So at Green Hope Foundation, through all of our actions, we seek to tackle inequalities and promote inclusivity. So for this reason, our work focuses mainly in marginalized communities. So that includes children in Syrian refugee camps, Rohingya refugee camps, children of prisoners, HIV-positive children, children in orphanages. And safety is a very big concern for us, because many of the times we are working in extremely remote areas or in war-torn zones or in no man's land. So that is, of course, a big concern for us. And personally, throughout my journey, I have faced threats of physical abuse, death threats, stalking, cyberbullying, all because I, along with my organization, are trying to do something better for our community and for our planet. So that's why making sure that children especially have safe spaces where they can take forward their work is a very big area of where Green Hope works, so that no child or no one actually would ever have to face what I faced in my journey, and making sure that we're all able to carry forward our work and the passion and whatever we dream of doing. So yeah, safety has been a very big challenge for us all throughout for the last 11 years that I've been in this field.
Wow, thanks for sharing such a personal experience. I'm sure everyone's been through so many different challenges, and we can learn so much from each other. Which brings me to my next and final question, which is really an opportunity to see how we can support other youth that are looking to get involved in this space. And the question is around what advice you would give to youth that are feeling lost, disempowered, and how do we give them that same level of empowerment as well? So just to be mindful of time, we're gonna do like quick one sentence on what advice you would give to other youth that are feeling lost.
I
Milton,
can go if you want to go in the same order. Oh,
yeah, that same order is perfect. Abnash, go ahead.
In one sentence, I would say the biggest thing is find something that you already like doing and see if there's any way that you can use that as some kind of tool for change. So if you like making videos, if you like making music, writing, playing sports, try and find some way that you take something that you enjoy and combine that with something that you care a lot about. And that's probably the biggest way to use that as a platform to share your voice and get started from there.
Yeah, love that. Awesome. Milton.
All right, I'll try. It's tough. That's a tough question, though. I think one thing, just from previous conversations we were having, I think it's also okay to be fluid in what you think is your like calling. Let's say, before I was super into one part of environmental action, and then as I learned things and as I learned more and more about how I view the world, then I got more into, let's say, social entrepreneurship, and then even that meaning changed over time, and my understanding of what I wanted to create for maximum impact changed as well. So I think just being at peace with how that changes, and just the most important thing I think is just going for it. Just don't be afraid. There's this issue that we're facing is so big that don't worry about what others think. Just really go for it, try, and you won't regret it. Like definitely won't regret it.
Mm-hmm. Taking action is a big theme here. Thanks,
Yeah.
Milton. Rebecca.
I think connect with other people who feel similar to you, but also people who have different experiences. Like having a variety of lived experiences and meeting people who are different from you, and working together. And also recognizing that I think in many ways, like school robs us of agency, and that like we grow up in this environment that we don't have much control over. And as a result, feel like as teenagers, we have a sense that like other people create change, and that there's everything is just like a rigid structure, but recognizing that that's partly just like a product of our education system, and that everything is just the result of like people making choices with other people to change things.
That's beautiful. Thank you. All right, Kehkashan, our last advice.
My message is always to be positive, surround yourself with positivity, fight that battle within and come out of that hopelessness. And at the end of the day, only you can take yourself out of that hopelessness and take that extra step and just step out of your comfort zone. And honestly, someone needs to take that first step and step out of their comfort zone, and that person always should be you.
Amazing. There's so much that we could take away collectively from the four speakers. So a big virtual round of applause for the four speakers that shared their stories. That was so incredible. And I'm excited to see where these journeys take you, and excited to eventually get to ask more questions as well and hear more stories down the line too. So with that, we're officially wrapping this session up. Thanks everyone for really joining us, for engaging, for asking questions, for actively listening. There are 3 more events still happening where you can still listen to more stories from the Starfish community as well. There's one happening tomorrow and 2 next week as well. So be sure to tune in, go on our Facebook page, Eventbrite page. But that's it from us. Really appreciate you tuning in. Feel free to jump off mute and say bye as you leave this call, and really enjoy the rest of your day as well. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.